What's going on, y'all? Well, I was wrong about my prediction about the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Detroit Pistons game 7 because remember I said my series recap vid talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves and the San Antonio Spurs. I was like, man, the freaking Cavaliers did not show up and they got blown out of their house 115 to 94. I said that there was no way they were going to win game 7 now because they had all the momentum. They gave all the momentum back to Detroit. And now it's just like I was wrong. The Cavaliers just absolutely dominated Detroit in their house, bro. It is absolutely wild. So I don't know what the heck I'm gonna title this video, but as I'm thinking of a title, let's just cue the intro and hopefully y'all enjoy the show right here, right now. Jalen Duran, this show's for you, baby. So what happened in the Motor City last night? Well, before the game, I was watching the Cleveland Cavaliers shoot around, and I saw something in Donovan Mitchell that said, "Oh my gosh, this guy's more locked in than he was Game 6." I can tell by the body language that Donovan Mitchell was absolutely engaged and he was ready to win this game, bro. I saw a much different Cleveland Cavalier team from the opening possession to the final buzzer. Like this was a different Cavs team than I saw at Game 6. Game 6 is just like I don't know what happened. It's just like they came out in front of their home crowd and it's just like it looked like they were lackadaisical. James Harden played I don't think he played a bad game if you look at his overall points and such, but his turnovers were so egregiously bad. It was like those typical James Harden low IQ turnovers. And James Harden does have a high IQ with the basketball, but it's just so spotty as well. You know what I mean? Even though, again, he racks up a lot of assists. But the one thing I will say is that James Harden had 9 points and he was 2 of 10. So, yeah, he choked in that department. But where he didn't choke is commanding the offense. I thought he did a great job setting up a lot of guys like Sam Merrill, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and Donovan Mitchell as well. Because of the fact he commanded the offense really well, they had a much better flow and a better pace to their game. And it looked like they came out with a lot more energy than they did in game 6. Whereas the Detroit Pistons, they just looked like they were deadheaded. It was the same thing as the Cleveland Cavaliers in game 6. The Pistons this time, they were absolutely they looked like deers in headlights out there. And it's just like all the open shots that they were hitting in games 5, 6, and 7 of the Magic series and the first two games of the series, they were not going down. Even when they lost games 3 and 4, they were hitting those same shots and they got relatively open looks. And for some reason, the Detroit Pistons could not convert on any of them. You had that going on. It was just a very bad offensive night, and it's just like the old classic saying goes, "This Cade Cunningham game 7 could have been an email," because dude was absolutely terrible. And y'all know I love Cade. I'm not a Pistons fan, but Cade is one of my favorite players. He definitely chose a bad time to have his worst game of the playoffs. So let me look at the final stat lines here. The Cavaliers, like I said, they looked a lot more locked in. Sam Merrill came off the bench with 23, so he basically joined the NBA playoff immortals. If you know, you know. Terrence Mann, Caleb Martin, Grant Williams, yeah, and Lonnie Walker the fourth. Shout out to Laker fans. Y'all know what I'm talking about when I mention Lonnie Walker the fourth. Sam Merrill joins the NBA playoff immortals when it comes to that. 23 points, and it's just like he was looking like prime Steph Curry out there, hitting all those threes. He was taking guys off the dribble. He was cutting to the basket, and he made some really good defensive plays. I think he had a block underneath the rim against Duncan Robinson, from what I know, or was it a strip? I have no idea. He was making good defensive plays. He had one big steal in this game. Again, James Harden had 6 assists, and he did a great job commanding the offense. Donovan Mitchell was pretty quiet for most of the game until he exploded in the third quarter. Jared Allen had 23, outplayed Duran, and Duran basically went back to being DeAndre Ayton again, even though he had a couple blocks. Evan Mobley had 21 and 12 with a couple steals and a couple blocks. Mobley was a force on both sides of the ball. I thought he did a great job neutralizing Tobias Harris and Jalen Duran, and he made those two work on the defensive end, which obviously, if you look at Tobias Harris's stats, and I'm not excusing Tobias at all, But that's one of the reasons why Tobias had a bad game because of what Evan Mobley was doing to him. They wore him down to a point where Tobias couldn't hit any of the shots that he was hitting in the last game seven before the this past one last night, which was game seven against the Magic, where Tobias had a legacy game, 30 points. Max Strus with nine, and he had three steals. Again, Max Strus came up big defensively once again, just like he did in game five. Just an overall well balanced attack between the starters and a couple of their bench players. And it was a great defensive showing from the Cavaliers. On the other side, Dennis Jenkins, who has been one of the more better surprises of these playoffs, he ended his night with 17, but he was really inefficient, 4 at 12, 2 at 7 from 3. A lot of his points did come when the game really didn't matter that much, but Jenkins, he played his heart out, man. I had to get to Jenkins, especially when Duncan Robinson was out of the lineup. I thought he came in and he became that second ball handler next to Cade because of his play style and how he's been on his uprise with the Pistons. It made Jaden Ivey expendable. But Cade, on the other hand, yeah, he had two steals, but he ended his night with 13 and 5, shooting 5 of 16, and he was 0 of 7 from 3. And it just felt like Cade was forcing a lot of shots, too. It was one of those games where it's just like once the Cavaliers went up big and the Pistons got down into a hole, it just felt like the Pistons were trying to get everything back in one play. They were rushing their shots. They were trying to attempt a lot of threes that they didn't really need to take. Jalen Duren was a no factor. B-Ball Paul, who has been the savior of this series up until this point, he did not have a good game. Isaiah Stewart did not have a good game. Only had 3 points in 6 minutes. Duncan Robinson is the same thing as Jenkins. He also had a good game, but again, a good amount of Duncan Robinson's points came when the game was already decided. And Marcus Sasser, he tried coming in and making things happen, but he ended up shooting 3 of 12. All of his 3 field goals that he hit were all threes, and from the 3-point line, he was 3 of 9. Karis LeVert did not show up at all. One of the things that kind of stuck out to me in this series, and in truth in the Magic series, and I pointed out at the very beginning of that series, and a lot of people were pointing this out. Running back Philly was also pointing this out. The Pistons are way too Cade Cunningham reliant. I made my video last month talking about Cade Cunningham's rib injury, or his collapsed lung injury, I should say. And I said that Cade has a very high usage rate, which is a problem because the roster is not versatile enough for him to get away with having such a high usage rate. The same thing goes with Anthony Edwards too. Anthony Edwards does not have another shot creator right beside him outside of like what Ayo Dosunmu, Julius Randle. Again, he's not that guy. I said it in my Minnesota video a couple of nights ago. Rudy Gobert's not an offensive player. Jay McDaniels, he's good, but it's just like, do you want him to be your second scorer next to Ant Edwards? I don't think so. And they really didn't have much of a bench outside of Terrence Shannon and a bit of Bones Highland and Nas Reed. Those are the only guys I can remember that came off the Minnesota bench consistently. And then you look at Luka this year. I feel like Luka, even though he has better players than Austin Reeves and LeBron, I think Luka's usage rate was also going to be a problem because the offense is very Luka reliant. Difference is the Pistons nor the Timberwolves don't have a Austin Reeves or LeBron James. If they had those type of players, then yeah, Cade and Ant can get away with having such a high usage rate. But even I can throw Luka in there because outside of LeBron and Reeves, the roster is not that versatile. Outside of I guess Rui Hachimura and a bit of Jackson Hayes. But you see it in the Pistons series too. And I said that in my Cade Cunningham video. The reason why Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Tyrese Halliburton can get away with having such a high usage rate is because the players around them take a lot of pressure off of them to a point where, yeah, the offense runs through Shai and Hallie, but the other guys around them can take a lot of pressure off of them as well because they're very versatile in what they do. With the Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton, he has Pascal Siakam, he has Andrew Nembhard, he has Aaron Nesmith. Back then he had Miles Turner, and now he flipped him, and now it's flipped to Vitsa Zubats. And then you have TJ McConnell coming off the bench. SGA has guys like Jalen Williams, J-Dub, the other Jalen Williams, J. Will, Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Hartenstein, who's an underrated playmaker at the center position, Lou Dort, who is who's not a bad three-point shooter at all. You have AJ Mitchell, who torched the Lakers in that whole entire series, which was, 4-0 sweep. And then you have Jared McCain, who off the bench, he can ignite a lot of OKC's offense when Shai Gilgeous is on the bench. The Pistons really don't have that. They don't have that secondary scorer off the bench, nor they have a scorer in the starting lineup that you can also go to take pressure off of Cade, like Shai, like Hallie, to an extent Luka too, because again, Reeves and Bron. But, guys like Cade and Ant, it kind of reminds me of when Russell Westbrook had a high usage rate because the players around him weren't good enough outside of, okay, yeah, Kevin Durant and Paul George. And then LeBron had a high usage rate in 2018 when his second best player was like what, Jeff Green, George Hill, aging Kevin Love, and J.R. Smith, who ran out the clock for no reason at all. So I'm not saying the Pistons have bad players. It's just that to win a championship, that team is not going to that team is basically not going to cut it. And you definitely need younger athletic wings that can defend and that can score. And because of the fact that Jalen Duren was pretty much unreliable in like what 11 of the 14 games the Pistons played in this whole entire playoffs, I don't know if he can be that guy to take pressure off of Cade because again, Jalen Duren is not a face-up five. I give DeAndre Ayton a lot of flack, especially with what he's doing or what he didn't do with the Lakers this year. But the one thing I will give DA is this. At least he can create his own shot off the dribble, and he's a good mid-range shooter. We saw it plenty of times with the Phoenix Suns. I saw it a good amount of times this year with the Lakers, even though he was absolutely trash in pretty much all 10 games in these playoffs, 6 against the Rockets, and then the 4-game sweep against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Bam Adebayo is the same thing. I think if Jalen Duren can start to become that type of shot creator that Bam is, okay, that's one thing. But I feel like he's going to go into year 5, and it's like I don't see him being as better of a player than he was this year. Yeah, he's a 19 and 10 guy, but Duren gets those points off of pick and rolls with Cade, which is my point that I brought up about DeAndre Ayton being with the Lakers. The reason why he was an 18 and 10 guy in Phoenix is because he had Chris Paul and Devin Booker to set him up. And yes, he had Luka and he had Reeves, but even with that, I think Jalen Duren has a higher motor than Ayton. That's for damn sure. If the Lakers had Jalen Duren, we'd be better off. But because of how Duren played this whole entire postseason, getting owned by Wendell Carter Jr. the first 5 games of the Magic series, and then getting owned when it mattered most against Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, for some reason, I feel like the Pistons should really reconsider giving him the max deal. You know what I mean? Because it's just like you give him that max deal, his pockets get too heavy, and it's just like he's not going to be a better player because that's the case with some of these players that do get paid that amount of money. As we saw with guys like Andrew Wiggins, who got a really big contract with the Golden State Warriors. He never really progressed after the 2022 championship, and then the Warriors moved on from him to get Jimmy Butler. So I feel like it's a double-edged sword because yes, Duren is a really good big that can complement Cade, yes. But I feel like at this juncture of Cade's career, he's going to go into year 6. I think it'll be year 6 for him, yeah. So you probably want to really reconstruct the roster. And I know the Pistons are not a 3-point shooting team, but I feel like if you really want to be successful with Cade on your team, you either need to A, get another star, or B, resort to a 5-out offense. You know what I mean? So I got a couple things for y'all that I wrote down in my notes last night. If y'all can see that, pause to read. Now I know some of these names are going to be ridiculous, but you guys got to hear me out on this. So I would keep B-ball Paul Reed. I think he should be the second string backup to Jalen Duren if they keep him, or another center that they do get to replace Duren. I would keep Duncan Robinson for sure. I think they should stay with the lineup with Cade Cunningham and Dennis Jenkins because I think Jenkins can take a lot of pressure off of Cade when it comes to being a secondary ball handler. And I would not want to re-sign Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris in his last game gave me 5 points, and all of them were from free throws. He was 0-6 from the field, and this is the same Tobias Harris that gave me 0 points in an elimination game when he was a Philadelphia 76er when they were facing the New York Knicks in 2024. You know what I'm saying? And the game before, he had 6 points. The game before, in game 5, he had 13 points. So it was like we were slowly seeing playoff Tobias Harris. And I thought throughout the Orlando series and the first 2 games of this series, I'm just like, okay, this is a different Tobias Harris than what we saw in Philly. But again, he just reverted back to the Tobias Harris that Philly fans tried to warn Pistons fans about. Now, Philly fans are just like, yeah, I told y'all. We tried to tell y'all, man. So, but no, seriously, I would not want to resign Tobias because it's just like, first of all, he's older. He's going to be 34 by the time he comes back to the Pistons if the Pistons were to offer him a contract. And he's going to be and he's not going to be a better player than what he is now. You know what I mean? So I feel like if you can get someone younger, I said I obviously put it in my notes, I would trade Isaiah Stewart and Karis LeVert for players like Klay Thompson and PJ Washington. Now, slow your roll. I know Pistons fans are going to get all in a fuss with me about the whole Klay thing. Let me explain. Let me explain. Yes, I know Klay is 37 years old. But the difference is between getting him and paying Tobias is that Klay is not going to ask for a bigger role. He's going to have the same type of role off the bench that Duncan Robinson has, meaning to be a 3-point shooter, space the floor for Cade or Jenkins, depending on which one comes in first. And he's not going to be the same player that he was in Golden State, but I think Klay is willing to accept a lesser role in this juncture of his career. He was willing to come off the bench when Jason Kidd demoted him to the bench. You know what I mean? So I feel like he'll accept his role in Detroit just fine. And then you get PJ Washington, who, like I said on this channel many times when talking about the Pistons, he can do some of the things Tobias Harris can do, but he's younger, he's athletic, and he's better defensively than Toby, in my honest opinion. Because we saw what we saw in his playoff run with the Dallas Mavericks when he had Luka and Kyrie Irving. PJ was one of their better 3-and-D players, and he made some timely 3-point shots. Some of the shots that Tobias missed in Game 7, I think PJ would have hit those shots too. So I feel like it would be worth it trading for PJ. And plus, he fits that Detroit mold. And I know this name sounds like a meme, and I understand he's injury prone. But again, don't come at me, Pistons fans. This is just like an ideal roster. Not those exact players, but players that can fit the offense. You know what I mean? I would try to see if I can get Kristaps Porzingis because Porzingis is a better rim protector and he could spread the floor for Cade because I feel like with Cade's play style, you need a 5-out offense because Cade ain't the greatest 3-point shooter out there, even though he shot 43% these playoffs while averaging 28, 29 a game. I get that. But I feel like with Duran, there were times where it's just like his ineffectiveness ended up clogging up the floor for Cade in these playoffs, which is why, yes, Cade had 30 balls in the Magic series, but because of the fact that Jalen Duran was a no factor, it screwed up the spacing for Cade. And with that type of play style, which Cade is a playmaking slasher and a mid-range guy, you need to spread the floor for the guy. You know what I mean? So I think Porzingis does fit that mold really well. And yes, I understand. I understand he's injury prone. But I feel like he would also fit what the Pistons need going forward with Cade. And then I brought up another name, Jonathan Kuminga. I think Kuminga would be a solid option off the Detroit bench as well because Kuminga is a long athletic wing. He's a good defender. And when you need instant offense, outside of Duncan, outside of Klay, we saw it with the Golden State Warriors in spurts, and we definitely saw it with the Atlanta Hawks in the first round versus the New York Knicks. I'll get to the Cavs-Knicks series in a minute. I definitely saw Kuminga come in and bring in a lot of hustle and a lot of energy, and he could score the ball at will, which is what Golden State, for some reason, Steve Kerr never wanted to play the guy, even though he can prove that he's a really solid scorer off the bench, and he plays with a lot of hustle and energy. That's what I'm trying to say. So I feel like if you can go forward with a roster like that, I feel like the Pistons will be better off and they'll be better prepared for these type of moments, especially these Game 7s that matter a lot. And unfortunately, their season's over because, again, they did not do a good job at the trade deadline either. I bring this name up. Kevin Huerter, who you don't even play. And it's just like, yeah, he had that one good season with Sacramento. He was a decent shooter with Atlanta, but it's just like, bro, he doesn't even play, first of all. And when he did play, he was absolutely trash. And it's like the roster was not good enough. I thought getting a guy like Klay or someone like KCP or Kennard, and then you have PJ Washington. I thought, when you get players like that, they would translate a lot better for Cade's game. You know what I'm saying? So Pistons have a lot to think about, but overall they had a really successful year. Now let's go to the Knicks Cavs playoff preview. Obviously, I was really impressed with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They bounced back and they played with a lot more force, and they wanted more from the opening tip. They were hustling for loose balls. They were hustling for rebounds. Ausar Thompson, even though, yes, I've been saying he should be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and I've been saying he should win Defensive Player of the Year in 2027. I just feel like they imposed their will to a point where not even Ausar can save them, even with his spectacular defense. So I feel like in this series versus the Knicks, if the Cavs want to win this series, first of all, I think it'll go 7. But if they want to win the series, they have to out hustle every player on the Knicks. Because Josh Hart, he's going to be there. He's going to grab every offensive rebound. Mikal Bridges is a really good 3-and-D guy. And again, he's been a lot better at scoring the basketball since the beginning of the Atlanta series where they fell down 2-1. Once Mikal started picking up, he became the Mikal Bridges that was worth trading for. Yeah, would I trade five first round picks for the guy? No. But it's just like this is why they got him. You know what I mean? OG Anunoby will be back. I feel like the biggest factor in this series will be which of the two bigs are going to show up because I think Mike Brown is going to play Mitch Robinson and Karl Towns together to counter what Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen are doing. Obviously, game one is tomorrow, and we're going to see what happens there. But I feel like that's what's going to come down to. Which of the two bigs are going to show up? Are Mobley and Allen going to show up, or is Karl Towns and Mitch Robinson going to show up? Because I feel like with Cat's ability to space the floor, I feel like you're going to have to put Evan Mobley on him. You do not want to put Jarrett Allen on that guy. Because if you put, obviously, I think Kenny Atkinson knows that. I would hope he does. But I feel like it's going to be a battle of can they win the paint battle and can they win the rebounding battle? I feel like it's going to come down to those two things when it comes to the New York bigs and the Cleveland bigs. Because obviously, I know what I can expect from the guard play. I expect Jalen Brunson to have himself an amazing series. I know Max Strus is going to defend him for the most part because you don't want to put James Harden or Donovan Mitchell on Brunson. But at the same time, you have Mikal Bridges guarding Donovan Mitchell, and you're going to have OG Anunoby guarding James Harden, which I remember seeing a YouTube video where it talked about OG Anunoby as a rookie locking up James Harden on the defensive end. And this is when OG was a rookie with Toronto, and James Harden was at his absolute peak in Houston. And I think he won the MVP that year, too. And also, this is going to be the third time we see Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson go at each other in the playoffs. Obviously, we saw what we saw in 2022 in the first round when Jalen Brunson was with the Dallas Mavericks with Luka, and then you had Donovan Mitchell on the Utah Jazz with Rudy Gobert. Jalen Brunson came out victorious in that series, 4-2. This was 2022. And then the next year when Jalen Brunson was on Jalen Brunson's first season with the Knicks, as well as Donovan's first season with the Cavs, Jalen Brunson dominated that matchup 4-1. So now it's just like some old familiar foes on both sides of the spectrum. And it's just like, can Donovan Mitchell finally get his win against Brunson? I don't think so because the Knicks, they are really, really good. And I feel like going back to the usage rate when I talked about Cade, one of the reasons why Jalen Brunson can get away with having a high usage rate is because he has players like OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, Karl Anthony Towns, who can take a lot of pressure off of JB. And then the bench play is also going to be a factor because it's not that the Cleveland Cavaliers bench is bad. It's just that you have guys off of the New York bench that can come in and make things happen. Jordan Clarkson is an offensive spark. Jose Alvarado can do things on both sides of the ball. You have Ariel Hukporti who's getting some minutes. And then who else? Mitchell Robinson. He's probably going to be in the starting lineup. But at times, Mitch Robinson comes off the bench. Josh Hart's going to come off the bench, and he'll make things happen. So they have a much more versatile bench. But the Cavaliers, they do have an underrated bench in their own right, too. I mean, Sam Merrill's not going to score 23 a game. He's not going to turn to Lou Williams. But you have Schroeder. You have Dean Wade. And I feel like this is a series where you probably should play a bit more of Keon Ellis because I feel like Keon, he's a good defender and he's a good three-point shooter too. I don't know how he played during the regular season. Maybe Kenny Atkinson saw something he didn't like, or maybe matchup-wise, Keon Ellis was not going to be a factor at all. I don't know what was going on there. And Jalen Tyson dropped out of the rotation. So I feel like it's going to come down to the two bigs and which bench shows up more because the Knicks are a deep team. Like, you look at their guys, you look at their depth chart, and it's just like the starters for Cleveland better, they better show the hell up. I cannot have a game where James Harden ghosts the team, and I cannot have Donovan Mitchell ghost the team because that's what he did in Game 6. Look at this. Jordan Clarkson, Landry Shamet, Jose Alvarado, Ariel Hukporti. I know Mitch Robinson's going to start too, and then you have a bit of Tyler Kolek, who he may see some action. I don't know. But the Knicks, I feel like, are going to win this series in 6 games. But if the Cavaliers do win it, it's going to have to be, well, no. Let me backtrack a little bit. I think this series is going to be a lot more competitive than people think, but I feel like it's going to be a Game 6 winner. So I feel like either the Knicks or the Cavs are going to win it in a Game 6 in Cleveland. I personally would pick the Knicks, but if the Cavaliers were to win it, I feel like they should win it in a game six because, yeah, they won a game seven in Detroit and they won a game five in Detroit. So it'd be outlandish for me to say that they can't win. But it's just like you put it this way, man. I don't know if they could go into that ruckus environment in New York City and survive that. Because I know Detroit, it's a hostile environment. It ain't nothing to sneeze at. You can win a game seven out there, but it's like, do you really want to see yourselves in a game seven? I personally don't think so. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that the Knicks are going to win this series and punch their ticket to the NBA Finals for the first time since 1999, I think? Or do you guys think the Cavaliers will go back to the finals for the first time since 2018? And what do you guys think the Pistons should do this offseason? Do you guys think they should resign Durant and Tobias? Or do you guys think they should upgrade from those guys and see what they can get to improve their roster? And what names would you guys think of to improve the Detroit Pistons? And what do you guys think are going to be keys for the Cavaliers to win the series? Or if you're rooting for the Knicks, what are the keys for the Knicks to win the series? Whatever y'all thoughts are, please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Series Recap. I love y'all. I'll see y'all on the next one. That's the end of this video. I'm X. Deuces.